Okay, and Julie Quist with the Child Protection League is a guest today, speaking about many issues. She's no stranger to folks here in the southeastern Minnesota area in Rochester. She's been here as a guest before, very well attended event, and we're happy to announce that she'll be back with us on the 15th of April, speaking about a wide variety of issues. So today, Julie Quist, could you please enlighten us as to some of these issues that we might be talking about more extensively on the 15th during your visit?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Wes, for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of give people heads up on what's going on at the Capitol. And that's kind of what we're focusing on right now is what's going on there. And so let me just go through a few of the key issues that Child Protection League, that's what I'm with, Child Protection League, is focusing on. So, you know, you're more familiar, perhaps your audience is probably a little more familiar with comprehensive sex ed than anything else. And so I'll just start there, but I don't want to spend an inordinate amount of time on that. So it was introduced in 2019, and for the last 2 years, we've been educating the public on the issue, and we've distributed like tens of thousands of these. I'm going to show you these flyers to the public. I know it's backwards on here, right? Stop CSE, did you know? And it's got a kind of an overview of what CSE is. And the fact of the matter is people really have no idea, number one, that it was coming out, number two, what it really is. And as usual, the legislation is always couched in very nice sounding language. And so you take it apart. You have to look at what do these words actually mean, not what they want people to think they mean. And so we've kind of given an overview on what that is. And so on our website, cplaction.com, you can find a lot of information about this subject. And we've just done a lot. We've got some quick videos, we've got some, overviews. And just to give it it passed in the House in 2019. It never got a hearing in the Senate. And so it was reintroduced again here this year. And it's been going through the committees, and because it's Democrat control in the House, it's always a party line vote. And I'm very happy it's party line because the education we've done has allowed us to let Republicans at least know that this is bad. So, and that there's really a grassroots resistance to it, and people are triggered by this. And so they aren't joining in, because sometimes they join in because they don't look below the surface to see, what do these words mean. So it's one of the things we do is we show them what people, what they're telling people is that it is something parents really want. And parents, number one, don't know, so they can't want it. And number two, when they do these surveys, they ask these general questions that, don't tell them what it really is. Like, do you want them to know about birth control? Do you want your, child to know about STDs? Do you want your child to know, things like that? And, people are going to say, sure, we do. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to have health education or sex ed, yeah. And so then they say they want comprehensive sex ed as opposed to abstinence only, which is not at all what the alternative is abstinence only. It is, it isn't comprehensive. What this comprehensive sex ed does, I'm going to just read from this, removes all natural and protective boundaries for children and teens, encouraging early sexual exploration in graphic detail. It uses pornographic illustrations and graphic descriptions to teach children as young as 10 that all consensual sexual activity is their right. And so it's a whole new paradigm about being sexually active. They tell kids it's their right and it's healthy, and here's how to do it safely. And it's very graphic. It introduces them to topics that many may be familiar with, many should not be forced to be exposed to. So that's what this is. And this year, it was introduced again. I said it's been going through the committees, and we've been testifying. And I just wanted to point out another thing that we haven't spent a lot of time on in the last couple of years. And the fact is that this bill, which this year the bill number is HF358, is a gender identity mandate. Okay, so that's what sexual comprehensive sex ed is, as well as everything I just said. And it requires, here's the language, it requires that every CSE program must teach, quote, healthy, diverse sexual orientations and gender identity relationships. So, I mean, it's couched in language that, you know, I mean, what does that mean exactly? And then another part of the bill says that it must also, quote, respond to culturally diverse individuals in an inclusive manner. You know, all these, you know, what does that mean? Well, we tell them, okay, this means that the CSE mandate, which is for all pre-K public and charter public schools, will teach things that our parents really are not okay with. So in the hearing on February 10th, there was a representative from Chanhassen that questioned this in terms of age appropriateness. That's the only way he challenged it, which is fine, but he challenged it. Thank you. And this was the response from the author of the bill. She said, and she's from Minneapolis, quote, one of the most important parts of comprehensive sex education is knowing about gender identity. So she clarified right there, this is one of the most important things for putting it in. She says, I know I was never taught other than heteronormative view. So they don't want to teach that heterosexuality is normal, is the norm. That is verboten. You may not teach that. Those are my words. So
right.
I may not teach it. I know this is her quote. I know I was never taught other than heteronormative view of relationships. And I think it's really important. This is the author of the bill. And then who does she bring in as to substantiate that? She defers to a guy named Dan Buck, he's the Educational Equity Coordinator for Outfront Minnesota. Now, Outfront Minnesota is the most prominent, prosperous, LGBTQ plus activist lobbying group in Minnesota. So that's who she brings in to testify for the answer to that. And here's what he said. You know, on the record, this is a matter of human rights and equality. This isn't a matter of how someone may feel about how it is being taught in the classroom. In other words, we don't care how you feel. Homosexuality is not taught. It's who people are, and people need to accept that. It's time for adults to get on the bandwagon now and provide safe, comprehensive sex education. Okay, so they're just telling us what it is. And I'm going to quote one more quote from the author that she followed up. She says, just so we're all clear here, age has nothing to do with gender identity or sexual orientation. It is appropriate, and children see different sorts of families at all ages. So having tools to see what a loving relationship is, regardless of the gender of the person, of the people in those relationships, is age appropriate and important for students of all ages. Now, keep in mind, they start at pre-K. And it's very aggressive in the schools right now. At pre-K, they are giving them all kinds of books and teachings that you don't know what your gender is, or all kinds of, what this would do, it's already happening in the schools, let me tell you.
Yeah. But
what this would do is it would put it into law. And so it's the wedge that forces it. You know, you can say, my local school doesn't do that. You know, I mean, they might do that in St. Paul, Minneapolis, but honestly, our school doesn't do that. Well, I think they probably do. However, they don't have a choice if this is put in. So we are expecting that the Senate again will not hear the bill, and we're also expecting that when it goes to the House floor, there will be, as there was before, an amendment to remove this. There will be discussion, and there will be a roll call vote. And this is something that will be used in 2022 against everybody who votes for it. And as opposed to, I mean, there are people who are putting a political action committee together so that this can happen in 2022. In 2020, there was no political action committee that did that. And so a lot of the legislators, didn't use this because they don't want to be negative and, didn't want to go after, but somebody has to go after these people directly. So that's that bill.
Well, Julie Quist, you succeeded in your intro in answering an issue that was a burning question for me, is that what on earth could be the left-hand side's actual real purpose in introducing this legislation. And you've dropped the receipts here, you've given the footnotes, and you were very correct in quoting them accurately as to their own position as to what they're trying to do with this. I mean, there's both the superficial view that they're telling the parents, but then as usual, you're giving us the original source material that explains in their terms, in their words, what this actually really means, which is essential. And we're not seeing yet any public debate or public meeting or opportunity for input here with our public schools or locally. Is this the job perhaps of the Minnesota State Legislature to sort of involve the public in this process? Or would they rather this be something out of the purview of the public?
Yeah, they don't have any intention of making this a public issue, and they never have. And so what we do is we say, okay, here are your words, and they could be interpreted a number of ways, but so how are they being interpreted? So we go to the curriculum, and the curriculum that is being used for comprehensive sex ed, and that's what we tell people. We say, this is what it is. They say, it's to make people feel comfortable with their diversity, and here's what it means. This is what you're teaching them, and that's the shocking thing to people. And we do go around and tell people. But as far as the local school boards, and not just the local schools, not necessarily up to the boards yet, but it really needs to be local people engaged and going to the local schools and asking to see what specifically they're teaching. And that has to be ramped up. People have to gain courage to do that. So I'll tell you the reason for this whole thing is very much laid out in a book that we're bringing this speaker in for an event on April 24th. So I can tell you about that. But this woman has written a book called The Invincible Family. Now that looks backwards to you, right? You can't read that except backwards, right?
I'm seeing it the correct way. I
wonder.
wonder.
Okay, I see it backwards here.
In terms of the recording, I wonder if when the recording comes out, if it will be backwards. But it says The Invincible Family: Why the Global Campaign to Crush Motherhood and Fatherhood Can't Win. Beautiful.
She's an incredible speaker, and we're bringing her in on April 24th. And as one speaker, there's some good ones there. But anyway, what this really does is gives the overview picture, which we've been trying to communicate, but from the 40,000 feet up, why is this happening? And it's all part of a strategy to destroy the family, and that the family is the one unit that is most the defense against encroaching authoritarian government. And when you destroy the family, there's nothing. The government takes over. They have full authority. There's nothing that protects people from whatever the government wants to do to them. And it's always been a chief goal of any Marxist efforts, always. And
it was the stated goal on the website of the Black Lives Matter movement, on their own website, the destruction of the nuclear family and the erosion of gender. It was stated when they realized this was a public relations fiasco amongst the African American community. BLM had to scrub their own website to remove that content. Screenshots still exist all over the internet, but we know that's a stated goal of Marxism, right? You mentioned in your last talk in Rochester, you spoke, I think, a little bit about Michel Foucault, the French philosopher, who talked about education being like a panopticon, where the center can view all of the persons in the cell, and the persons individually can't view the panopticon in the middle. And that whole idea of having government operating somewhat like a factory or a prison or a school. And this puts government in the middle. This infiltrates the individual's life at the very youngest ages, so that their pleasure centers are linked in a sense to like Aldous Huxley's version of the dystopian future in Brave New World. It means that the individual is really under the control of the state and believes that their rewards come from the state. It puts the state in the center of their lives, doesn't it?
That's it. we're dependent on them, and they set the morals and the standards, and so yeah. So I don't want to spend too much more time on that, and I want to just touch on a couple other bills. And I want you to know that if you go to child protection or CPLAction.com, right on the front page, you can see there are options for looking at legislative issues. You click to that page, and you can see explanations for all of these things here.
We'll put those links in the description below this video for sure, Julie, so people can find you there.
Okay, great.
Oh, but please go on. Pardon me for interrupting.
Okay, so then the another one I wanted to tell you is this is not something we're opposing. This is something that's proactive on our part. And it's HF232, and let me just give you the Senate bill is SF1609, because it'll be heard more likely in the Senate than in the House. And I encourage people to sign up for our email updates, because, and you can do that right on our website, because it gives you action items when it's needed. We need to have, it's pretty much about ready to put out an action item for a couple of these things. And, but first we want to work with some of the committee chairs and things on that. So, but you need to know that this needs to have a hearing in the Senate. And what this is it removes the K-12 school exemption to the Minnesota Obscenity Statute. Okay, now people probably don't know that there is an obscenity statute that defines obscenity and says that it is harmful to minors. That's in state law. Obscenity is defined and it's they say it's in the best interest of the health, welfare, and safety of minors that the dissemination of sexually explicit written, photographic, printed, sound, or published material are deemed harmful to minors. So that's already in law, but there's an exemption for schools and libraries. And so that's the reason they can get this stuff in and not be violating state law. So we would like that exemption removed. Now, there are 43 states that have that kind of an exemption. And it was put back in the early 70s when Alfred Kinsey was getting great traction in the culture, and he really believed that it's healthy for children to be sexually active, and that really has got into the culture, and for that reason, they can do this. But what this bill would do is it would remove the K-12 school exemption from obscenity statute, and it would also entitle parents to file a civil lawsuit for disseminating or displaying obscene material and to recover damages like emotional distress, attorney's fees, and such. So that will hopefully it would be good if we could get a roll call vote on that in the House. It would be really good if we could pass it in the Senate. And it's the beginning of our effort to inform people that there is such an exemption. I don't think people know. Triggers everybody. So the other issue that we are dealing with is called student access to online porn on school databases. Now, schools have filters, but databases are copyrighted material. So when they link to these databases, they don't go through the school filter. And people don't know that their Chromebooks, through their Chromebooks in the schools, everybody has them now, they can access these databases. And when you go looking around on these databases, it's full of obscenity. So on our website, we have some really good short videos that take you through that. Just say here, okay, we're going to go. It's all through it's included in the Minnesota e-library. So it's ELM, e-library Minnesota. And, all the schools, and I'm talking about private and Christian schools, have links on their, available to the students for research projects to the ELM. Well, the ELM, has EBSCO. That's the name. That's just, and others. There are a couple, and there's another one called Gale that link to porn and obscenity on their platforms. And so it's really, so this bill, when we get a hearing on that, we've got some testifying from parents who've had the experience of their students, of their children, going online for research and finding things that they should never have access to. At least not the, here's what the defenders say. They say, hey, kids can get anything on the internet. They get on it all the time. It shouldn't be through their school Chromebooks. If you want to go home and do it, and your kid doesn't have filters at home, that's your business. But they shouldn't come to school, have their Chromebooks, which they're told are totally safe, and then go on these platforms anyway. So this would require database providers to block K-12 schools and libraries access to this material. And failure to do so constitutes a breach of contract with that entity, and payment would be withheld at the state level and at the local school level. So. And then we have another really big one, and this is called penalties for trafficking in child sexual abuse imagery. And I'll tell you what, let me see if I can bring up for myself here on, let's see here. Anyway, this information is very available to our kids, to the public. Okay, so let me see, sentencing guidelines, it's called. The Minnesota Child Abuse Crisis, we call it. The material being traded online depicts the violent abuse, torture, and rape of young children, even toddlers. And that's something that people may be familiar with, but the problem in Minnesota is that we are one of, if not the weakest state in the country to deal with these when they're convicted. About 85% of persons that are convicted of trafficking in these materials are only receiving probation and not prison time. Every image, now we're not just talking about, sexting or something like that. We're talking about violent sexual imagery that people, trade in. And every image of child sexual abuse imagery is a picture of a crime scene. And some of the information is too shocking to say what they're doing to these children, and that it is being distributed and used. So a lot of these people are receiving probation, and they're not required to register as sex offenders. 55% of predators in possession of violent child abuse images and videos may also be contact offenders, meaning they are actively abusing a child at the same time. And we have just a lot of information on that. And there was a Sentencing Guidelines Commission that put a report out on that in January. And that report is basically, they said, because the legislature said, well, let's just have the commission. There's a Sentencing Guideline Commission. Let's just have them look at it and see if we should do something more. And, the majority of them on that commission are appointees by the governor, and others are like, retired Supreme Court justices and likewise. Well, anyway, the majority on that commission said, we really don't need to do anything more. They did a little bit of something that made it look like they were improving, but they really didn't do anything. The minority on that objected, and all of those, that majority were all appointees, okay? The minority on that commission gave examples of the things that we're dealing with. And it is just beyond belief that they would treat people who are, this is a perverted pleasure for them, just to deal with these things, to share them, see them, use them. And a lot of them, when they're convicted of this, they get, they just get probation. And if they serve it, they don't even have a record on that there's anything going on with them. And they can be hired as bus drivers and teachers and police officers, and there's no record of them being a danger to our children. And so we're putting out a lot of information on that. You can also look on our website on that. We have an interview that's right now with an individual who's helped us a lot on that. And Alpha News, if you're familiar with that, has done a number of articles, and they're doing some more. So we really believe that Sentencing Guidelines Commission, the majority, they should resign because there is no excuse for them treating it this way. And like I say, in Minnesota, it's the worst in the country as far as this. And anyway, that's the other one that we're dealing with.
So, but please, can you provide some links, and we'll be sure to provide any links that you want, especially perhaps to Alpha News and of course the Child Protection League, and we'll include all of those that you'd like people to know about. Maybe this upcoming event on the 27th of April with the
24th.
author of the other book about the destruction of the
Yep.
family.
Yeah.
All of these things are happening around us, and we all seem too busy to be involved with all. I mean, for those of us who are working full-time jobs trying to pay taxes to support all of this nonsense, we just trust that the government is got our best interests in mind. But if they're normalizing and grooming people for this kind of behavior at the very youngest levels in the public schools, you want to kind of step up and maybe send an email, find out where your legislator stands, maybe make a phone call and find out where your senator or your House representative stands on these issues here in Minnesota. And
you're going to ask them to sign on as authors for these bills.
Yeah, and we'll include the House files too. Again, House File 232 is a pro, and Senate File 1604 is a pro. That's HF232 and SF1604. And then of course we'll provide links, I think, to the House files. That's very easily done. So you can see if your senator or rep is already an author or can sign up as an author. Tell them to.
Let me just correct that one. On House File 232, the Senate version is SF1609, and that is removing the obscenity statute, removing the exemption to the obscenity statute.
Some folks might not know how to use the website, but the links that we'll drop in the description below eventually will include direct links to those Senate files and House files. So you can see it right there. We'll just drop the whole link. And then the other link that was mentioned before is House File 358 on comprehensive sex ed. We'll drop a link in there to HF358, and of course to the Child Protection League action.com. And yeah, we'll make sure that all those are in the descriptions eventually. We can edit those in later and change them if we want to add some too. And then of course, Julie Quist, you can catch her live here in Rochester on Thursday, April 15th. And very excited to have you come back to the area, Julie Quist. Your event was incredibly well attended last time, and there were a lot of people who wanted to be there who couldn't see you last time. And we're in a much larger place this time you're coming, so there'll be space for all of our friends and allies, and totally private and exclusive place that will be well protected. So is there anything you'd want to say in closing? Anything further, Julie?
Well, we have a couple other speakers at this event on April 24th. And so I just wanted to mention one of them is Catherine Kirsten from the Center of the American Experiment, and she's going to be talking about the new social studies standards. And I'm sure that you've heard a lot about that. And
Yes.
And critical race theory involved in that, and anti-Americanism, and whiteness and that sort of thing. The other is our keynoter in the evening is Alex Newman. And if you don't know about Alex Newman, look him up because he's really pretty incredible. And he has he's a great writer, speaker, researcher, and he has headed up a group called Exit the School, this public schools. And I don't know, that's not the name of it exactly, but he has a lot of he wants to let people know all the options that they may have to these public school systems. And there are
Yes.
a number of different ways that you can take choices and make the choices, but getting your kids out is really the solution.
It really is the solution. And it's interesting, you mentioned that some of us are saying that the only good thing about this lockdown is that the Kool-Aid flavored hair folks don't have access to the children for this year. They're at home, and now parents are realizing there's all these resources for homeschooling. There's all of these alternatives to having your kids go through the cookie cutter public education process, and parents are discovering, hey, these options are real. So that's interesting. Newman is coming, and it's almost, I would really like to be there. Maybe I'll see if I can make that happen, because there's actually requests here locally for data requests put in, Freedom of Information Act requests put in here locally regarding critical race theory in our local schools, and there's been no satisfactory reply, really. And
yeah, I'm just going to say one other thing. Last Thursday, a week ago, Representative Lucero submitted a bill that defines male and female as chromosomes. You know, this is a male is somebody with an XY chromosome, sex chromosome, and a female is a person with a XX 6 chromosome. So then he says that males may not participate in female-only sports, and that and that's from elementary, high school, and post-secondary. And if they do, they're subject to a civil penalty. So in fact, KSTP did a a story on that, and of course they were all sympathetic to the LGBT side of the issue, saying how could they criminalize children who are just trying to play sports. And the thing is that they intimidate people. And I would like to just say that the most important thing we need to do these days is to have courage, because we are the home of the brave, but you can't be brave if you don't have any courage. And so we need to engage in the war and take these hits and fight back. And it's in our nature to just say, okay, you're under attack, so just withdraw. And we can't do that. And I think that's the biggest message we want to take to people. There is a price to pay. It's a war. And you don't fight a war by not fighting. You just don't. And you don't fight a war by never taking any casualties. And so we have to be willing to speak up. And the very fact of his being willing to say, this is a male and this is a female, and a male may not participate in women's or girls only sports, should be non-controversial. And he is going to be canceled over it. I mean, this is just shocking to the left. And of course, you may not say that. And he has other House authors with him too. There's no Senate, companion bill yet, but there should be. And it won't get through. They're going to for sure not let it through. But this actually puts a stake in the ground and say, we do not accept this, what do you call it? This gender, whatever. It is not right. It is not normal, and it shouldn't be treated as normal. And to say that is just verboten in this culture now.
Is it strange that those on the left-hand side, the leftists, don't want to believe the science? They don't want to trust the science, X, Y, X, X. And when these Title IX programs were created, they were designed to create benefits for our Minnesota girls to be able to participate in sports teams. There's nothing fair about having a dude compete in track and field with a girl. There's nothing fair about having a man compete in weightlifting with a female. Bone structure, muscle mass, body fat ratios. Men and women are different genders. That's just the way it is. And you know what? There are two, and and the Title IX programs were made to benefit this group of girls who'd been neglected by all this money that was spent on football programs, right? And having played center, I know what it means to be in the middle of the battle and the ref doesn't see when your face mask is grabbed and somebody yanks your head around, okay? You don't treat everybody that way. And so yeah, Julie, sorry, I stole the thunder again a little bit, but your point is very well taken, and kudos to Lucero for bringing that up. Yeah. And Lucero is his taste in color for suits is really interesting sometimes, but he's the colorful character. He's colorful. And what I like about him is that he's not afraid to march into the field and plant his flag right there in the middle and say, here's a line in the sand. It's not right to have boys competing in girls' sports. And then as far as that, there was a bill back in 2015 regarding sharing hotel rooms and
Right.
sharing locker rooms,
Yeah.
sports teams sharing bathrooms on school trips and so forth. It's
And
very,
this actually addresses that too, by the way. That
does
that
it?
bill also addresses, they may not be in the same private facilities of locker rooms or bathrooms, anything. So that address, it's the same thing as that, only it's, you know, much better put. And I'll tell you what, it was disappointing in 2015 that the Republicans didn't really hang tough on that, and
No.
they were afraid. And look at where we've come. And it isn't just Minnesota. Obviously, you know, we're doing this on an international, national basis. But, you know, I mean, at the local level, we need to challenge the narrative that no, we don't accept it. And we're not going to accept the fact that we're not allowed to say it. We're not allowed. What we're not allowed to say is usually the most important thing to say.
It's disappointing to live at a time when you see the bronze medalist, the silver medalist being female, and then the gold medalist in a tournament is a dude. And it was meant to be a women's competition.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem right that we rob women of their opportunity to be a gold medalist winner in a competition that's meant for women. It's just, to me, it's a no-brainer. And I can't imagine that there's any mother or father who would want their daughter to have that experience of training and competing and trying to excel, only to have it stolen by a guy who gets the gold because he couldn't compete on the other side you know, he couldn't make it with the men. So he goes and he wants to wrestle on the other side with the girls. It's just not right.
And they get around that by insisting that he's a woman. And they just, this, if you believe you're a woman, you are a woman. And it doesn't matter if you've had surgery, it doesn't matter even if you've had your hormone treatments, which some of them have, but it, you know, so they redefine it as nothing. So basically you are eliminating the meaning of male and female. So talk about destruction of the family. I mean, there you go, right to the heart of our identity as male or female the rug has been pulled out from underneath us. And you are just, you talk about women's sports. What it's doing to women's sports is it's destroying women's sports, but it's only a surface signal to what it's really doing to our whole culture, is that you are destroying the whole concept of male and female, because if it isn't based on biology, it's only based on what you think, then it's meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens to the family then? I mean, families are, you know, it's just unmanageable, and they know it.
It's just tremendous information, Julie, and very fascinating. And I like the fact that you are grounded in the footnotes and the end notes, and you've prepared the receipts, data-driven information, and then you also have the philosophical understanding of the bird's eye view. And we're looking forward to seeing you on the 15th of April, Julie.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming along today. See you now. Bye-bye.